To find out a lot more as we go. I hope Francis, personally, I hope he fights Deontay Wilder, because I don't know how many of you guys know this. The genesis of this channel, which is the thing that makes me happiest in the world, right? I can't even explain to you how grateful I am for you guys and this channel right now. I can't even explain to you how grateful I am. I wake up every morning, I remember this is my job now, and it's like my heart gets cracked like an egg and gratitude just envelops my entire body. Thank you guys, dude. And the genesis of this channel right here came because of another guy who I am incredibly grateful to right there. That dude. Okay? There's a reason why that dude is in the background every time, and I don't say it enough on the channel. It's because Chael put me on fan questions, and the question that I asked him that he put on first, I was on twice, but the first one that they put on was this. I will reenact it for you. What would be your dream fight under any circumstances with two guys under any rule set in any combat sport? Mine would be Francis Ngannou against Deontay Wilder in a boxing match in MMA gloves. Jesse, when are you going to talk about the Francis Ngannou situation? I got you guys' DMs, dude, right now. Everybody message me. I'm going to do it right now. Okay, so this is an exciting day for Francis. I would imagine not a very exciting day for the UFC. The idea that, that Francis this is a bad outcome might be true. It might be true. I know that Francis was ready to sign with the UFC very recently, so it means that they must have hit a sticking point, and I bet you it was not on money. I will bet you that it was not on money, and I will find this out during the week, but I do know the main points that Francis was trying to negotiate, which almost certainly led to them not being able to come to an agreement. So I'm going to tell you about that on this video, and we're going to go from there, because Francis is an incredibly principled person who was going to stick by his guns when it came to a couple things. And like I said, I'll tell you exactly what those are in a second. Now, this is the second time I'm having to record this. Every once in a while, you have like a total catastrophe in the, in the production process where I filmed 14 minutes and I lost the audio. So I'm reshooting this, and I only tell you that because I work really hard on this channel, and I would really appreciate if you're going to watch my content, please subscribe to the channel. You click the button, you forget about it, and that is all it is. On my channel, I don't ask. I just say, please subscribe to the channel. I'm not like, hey, if I blah, blah, blah. I'm like, dude, I'm working really hard. If you're going to watch my content, please subscribe to the channel. It makes a huge difference with the YouTube algorithm, and I appreciate it very, very much. I love you guys. Thank you. Also, sponsor this video is Sheath Underwear. And you want to know why? Because a guy like Francis Ngannou going to whether PFL, maybe fighting, Tyson Fury or Deontay Wilder, it takes a guy with a big set of brass balls. And you know what happens when you have brass balls during the summer? They get sweaty and they get nasty. And so people like him and me, we need Sheath Underwear where you can tuck things where it goes. It'll change your life. It'll change the way that you think about underwear. It'll change the way that you wear your underwear. Just get one pair if you don't have any and try them. And then hit me up, dude. If you hate them, I'll bring you on the channel or something. If you get Sheath Underwear and you hate them, just hit me up and be like, I hate these Sheath Underwear. I'll call you a liar. And then maybe I'll bring you on the channel at some point, okay? So go to sheathunderwear.com and use promo code FIRE, and that will get you 20% off of your purchase, which means you should probably buy more than one pair, dude, because you get 20% off. Sheathunderwear.com and use promo code FIRE. I love you guys. Let's get into this thing. All right. So the principled pieces of this story that Francis was going to stick by are these, okay? There were three things, not four, three that I know about. There's only three things maybe there might have been six. I actually don't really know, but I do know about three. So here are the three things, okay? Number one, he did not want extensions in the contract, okay? Now, I haven't heard that discussed publicly, but I know for a 100% fact that is one of the main sticking points. He wanted no extensions, and I'll tell you exactly what that means in a second. Two, he wanted fighter health care, okay? And this is very selfless of him, and I'll tell you why this is not an outlandish ask. I used to think this is a totally outlandish ask, and I'm changing my mind because I came up with a structure that would solve both sides' problems, okay? And number three, he wanted the ability to box, okay? He didn't want to be locked in and not allowed to box because he has these huge fights over here, okay? And I'll also go through why the UFC didn't want to do him for obvious reasons, okay? But nonetheless, this is why they couldn't come to an agreement. Dana came out publicly and he said, we made him an offer that would have made him the highest paid heavyweight of all time, and that includes Brock Lesnar. I'm sure that that's true. I am actually essentially positive that that's true. The thing is, that wasn't what the sticking point is. Not everything can be solved with money. Most things can. And that speaks to Francis's character. Okay? Because most fighters, if they come to the UFC with something that they're demanding that is very inconvenient for the UFC just offers them more money. And generally they take it. Fighting as a sport and as an endeavor is a very personal one. I mean, you're on a team of guys that you train with, but the people you're competing against a single person. Okay? You don't think about other UFC fighters as your collective brothers or sisters, really. You know what I mean? There's a UFC family, of course. You go, you stay at a fighter hotel, you got the people all, travel together. But like when it comes to this kind of thing, if someone offers you a boatload of money, usually you're going to just go, all right, cool. That solves my problems. Let's do this. So I would imagine that has happened previously, like with Conor McGregor, things like that, because it's a strong leverage point to play. Okay? But so for Francis, the boxing thing was huge, and here is one of the main reasons. Again, it does have to do with money because he's going to make a boatload of money when he fights Deontay or Tyson Fury. That's a fact, okay? And he will. He will do that. Now, the reason the UFC didn't want to do that, 2 reasons. One, they don't want to set a precedent where they're going to be facilitating UFC fighters going and boxing other people. They did it for Conor. Conor is not included in UFC. Like, you can't, there's no UFC fighter, none, not Nate, not Masvidal, not Francis, not anyone who can play the you did it for Conor card. And everybody knows that. Conor is in a completely different category. He's Conor, and then there's everyone else. He's that big of a star, and no one is going to argue that, not even a smart UFC fighter, okay? But if you do it for Francis, that's different, okay? I'm not saying Francis isn't special. I'm saying he's not Conor, okay? So as soon as the UFC facilitates that for Francis, how are they going to tell Kamaru no when he wants to fight Canelo? How are they going to tell this guy no when he wants to go do blah, blah, blah? They can't, it is a position that they will only get forced into if they have to, and this was not a leverage position that was going to force them into it, okay? So there's that. And the second reason is they think that Tyson Fury is going to beat the brakes off of Francis, and they don't want their name on that, right? If Francis leaves the UFC and he goes and he fights Tyson Fury and he gets his face beaten in, the UFC's like, we told you he wasn't that good. Okay. That actually helps them, right? If he goes and he gets beat, it helps the UFC. If they facilitate it, he gets beat, it hurts the UFC. Okay. So like the best case scenario right now for the UFC is John Jones beats Cyril Gane. He becomes a champion. They've never seen Francis fight John Jones. And they go, boom, he's the real heavyweight champion anyway. And he goes over there, gets his head beat in, and they go, boom, see? You don't need to worry about what Francis, he wasn't the real champion anyway. John Jones is, and look at what happened over there. He got beat down. That's their best case scenario, and that's what they're gambling on. Because here's the other part of this. If Francis signs with PFL, it doesn't matter what he does. No matter who he beats, it's irrelevant. He will run through guys at PFL in 10 seconds. Like every single PFL MMA fight for Francis will be 10 seconds long. If that's where he goes. Do you guys, 10 seconds. There'll be 10-second fights. Okay. Anyway, but I don't even know how they're going to get people to get in there with him. But okay, so that's boxing. That's why they didn't want to do boxing. Okay. Number 2 is I'll go through the healthcare thing and then we'll go through extensions because I don't think most people know about the extensions. Okay. The healthcare thing, he was very adamant that to put fighter healthcare into, like, he'll sign as long as they start covering healthcare for fighters. Now, I know, and I know this also because I just heard Francis say it in an interview, that the UFC essentially said we can't do fighter healthcare because these guys, you're all independent contractors. So Francis said, well, if we're independent contractors, then let us have the freedom to do things that independent contractors could do. Now, that's a decent argument for sure. And the contracts are 100% one-sided for the UFC. But here's the thing about that, right? The UFC, you know what? I'm not even getting into that. I'm going to tell you about the healthcare thing, okay? So if the UFC wants to keep them as independent contractors, and if they have to be W-2 to do health insurance, which I'm pretty sure is accurate. If they want to keep them 1099, what they do is they do a health insurance stipend. And what that means is they provide a certain amount of money for each fighter each month, no matter what, as long as they're under contract with the UFC. And that is, the fighters use that for healthcare, right? So the UFC goes, all right, here, we'll give each of you $1,000 a month towards your healthcare. Okay. Now, how much do you think that would cost? And let's say there's 400 people. Let's say there's 400 fighters under contract. How much would that cost? $1,000 a month for each fighter if there's 400. $4.8 million. That's nothing, okay? That's nothing to them. $4.8 million to give healthcare to the UFC fighters, which is a totally reasonable ask, okay? So I actually think Francis was in a strong spot asking for that. And think about this. They give him And I will acknowledge getting healthcare was going to be very challenging for the UFC fighters because I just had to do this, I just had to do this because now Gabrielle and I had to get our family had to get our own healthcare. And just so you guys know, a family of 5 cost me $1,250 a month. I don't know if that's a lot or a little, to be honest, but that's what we're paying. And it's good. It's good coverage though. And we had to go through this whole questionnaire and they're like, do you do martial arts? And I was like, yes. They're all, do you compete in martial arts? I'm like, yeah. I mean, I do jiu-jitsu tournaments. I think if I lie, then whatever. So I said yes. And they still approved us. But if you're like, yeah, I'm a UFC fighter. They're like, oh, cool. So just throw on a yearly ACL. I mean, think about all the surgeries they'd be doing. But nonetheless, that's not really the UFC's problem because they always have to get health insurance anyway. The UFC provides a stipend and that's health insurance, right? Like that could solve that problem with a stipend. Okay. So that could have been done, but I know that was one of France's sticking points. Now the extensions is something different. Okay. So the extensions look like this. Every time a UFC fighter does an external grappling match, okay. Now, most people don't know about this, but if you ask any UFC fighter about this who knows their contract, they will tell you the same thing. If they go do like submission underground or one of these things that you see guys competing in like the grappling matches, whatever, they're allowed to do it, but it tacks on 6 months onto their contract. Okay. So as far as I understand it, now this has been told to me. It's 100% in there. I haven't read the actual contractual language or else I could tell you for sure. But as I understand it for sure it's in there. It adds 6 months to the end date on their contract. So it doesn't add like an additional fight or anything. So if they have 4 fights left, they still have 4 fights left. But the end date, they get extended by 6 months. Okay. So and Francis in his previous contract or the contract that he just fought out, had so many extensions in it. And he was like, no extensions. I don't want any extensions. I want clear-cut guidelines. I'll take this many fights for this much money. No extensions. Because there were all these hidden things in there that extended him. And he's just like, dude, no. And I know that was a major sticking point all along his contract dispute was about the extensions. The UFC said they have those in every single contract. So all of this is about setting precedent for the UFC. That's what this is all about. If they take the extensions out of his contract, they're going to have to start doing it for other people because everybody talks. How do I know about this stuff? People talk. So they know they do it for one person. They're going to have to start doing it for a lot of people. So that's why they didn't want to take the extensions out because everyone has them. Okay. So those are the 3 things. So let's move to another phase of the video. What's Francis going to do and why? And how is this going to affect the broader sport? Because that's what's really important. Okay. So what Francis appears to be doing is he's going to go to PFL. And I say that because his mom was seen wearing a PFL shirt. That's one of those things that's like a key indicator. It's not a mistake that he got photographed with his mom wearing a PFL shirt. He might have put that on his own Instagram. Now, the part of me that likes to think through negotiations thinks maybe he was negotiating. Maybe he's negotiating, right? Because I do know, one thing I can tell you for sure, is that Francis was intending to go to UFC not that long ago. Like he thought that they were getting close to a deal. That is what he thought. I know that for sure. Okay. I don't know for sure that he's going to PFL now, but I do know that he had that picture taken or up on his Instagram, whatever. So whether he was negotiating or whether he's seriously going to PFL, that I can't tell you for sure yet. But what I can tell you is that Francis is going to make a lot of money boxing, okay? If you think that this is not going to lead to Francis boxing, you're crazy. And that is what the UFC was negotiating against. Because Francis has 2 fights in boxing that are absolute surefire barn burner pay-per-views, right? You got Tyson Fury, you got Deontay Wilder. Now, there are a lot of things to think through when you think of how you would want to approach which one to do first, which one to do second, because now he's going to have total freedom to do whatever he wants. The UFC officially released him. They are not going to enforce any of the things. They're like, go ahead, rock and roll. Now, the UFC is playing a hand here, okay? Like this is not, what this is right here is the UFC is trying to call Francis's bluff. That's what they're doing, right? Because up to now, I'm sure the UFC has probably pressed themselves as much as they possibly can in terms of negotiation. Because like I said, they're not going to restructure the way that they do deals for Francis because he wants it. You know what I mean? They're not going to do that. Now, they might need to do that at a future time, depending on how this plays out. And I'll tell you exactly what I mean, okay? All of the fighters in the UFC are watching right now. All of them. They are all watching, okay? It is very rare for a UFC fighter to retire with enough money to be done and not have to worry about what they're going to do. Sean Strickland in the octagon last night in his post-fight speech talked about Stephan Bonert, and he made a very excellent point, which is take a look and think about the old dogs that have retired. Give them a look, help them out, because it's a tough life after fighting. I've said this a billion times on the channel. I don't see super high glamour for most guys in the octagon. That is why I am so inspired by the sport, because ultimately what you're basically doing as a fighter is you're sacrificing the second half of your life for ultimate glory in the first half. That is what the trade-off is. The number of guys who retire with super money in their accounts, with the discipline to not spend it, where they know they're going to be comfortable for this life, is so small. It is so small. Okay? And so they're chasing the dream to be the best in the world for money and fame and glory, but we all know it's a short-lived deal, okay? So if you have someone who has the opportunity to actually make life-changing money, not I'm going to be rich for a couple years money, now, in fairness, plenty of these guys make enough money that if they're really smart, they can turn it into long-term money, but they can't just put it in a bank and be done with it, They need to invest in real estate. They need to invest in other projects. They need to build things external from the UFC. They can't just make money and be done, most of them, right? Conor probably could have, but he buys Lamborghini boats, so he's obviously not in that category either. But Francis could be. Francis comes from a sand mine in Africa, okay? He sold his motorcycle so that he could buy boxing lessons, okay? He didn't have enough money for boxing lessons. He sold his vehicle for boxing lessons, okay? That's the poverty he comes from. He tried to paddle across the ocean with his fucking hands, okay? That's where he comes from. So if he makes $35 million for a fight, that's a wrap for him, okay? That's it. He never will have to worry about money ever again. One fight. Now, the UFC offered to make him the highest paid heavyweight of all time. I can promise you that there is no scenario where that even creeps up on that number. And I'll tell you another reason why. So let's say, hypothetically, that they offered him a $6 million base, right? Let's say it was a $6 million base salary. Let's even say it was $7. Let's say it's a $7 million base salary. And with a guarantee of $10 million, okay? So it's a guarantee of $10 million. Sounds like a lot of dough, right? Okay, it is a lot of dough, obviously. But if you're going to make 3.5 times that for this one boxing match, that is a no-brainer, because all of the contracts are structured as if you're the champion, you make this. If you're not the champion, you make this. So even if he was getting this enormous thing for, if he's a champion, he's still going down to probably 750, 750 on the highest side if he's not the champion, which means he has to win. He would have to win 3.5 fights to get to this one fight. And after he does the boxing match, you think his value goes down in MMA? It doesn't. If he loses to Tyson Fury, who cares? What does that have to do with MMA? Nothing. Right? So the smart money for him is to go do the boxing right now. Of course. That's what he should do. Now, should he do Deontay Wilder or Tyson Fury? That is the question, because either of them would want to do that fight, of course, because they'll make a boatload of dough also. And it's against a 0-0 pro boxer, right? It's a no-brainer. So with Francis, you got two things to consider. Number one is if you do Tyson Fury, you're probably going to lose. Right? Probably. I mean, look, like anything could happen, but most likely you're going to lose that fight. You have a much better chance of beating Deontay Wilder. But if you do the Tyson Fury fight and he beats the brakes off you, it's going to be hard to sell the Deontay Wilder fight, right? But if you do the Deontay Wilder fight first and you win, you could do a Tyson Fury fight that will literally set world records for pay-per-views. I mean, maybe not world records, but it'll be astronomical. So it's a gamble either way. But in both scenarios, you make so much more money than you would make in the UFC. It's hard to even wrap your brain around, right? And the thing is, he's going to be able to sign with PFL, who's going to pay him a lot of money. I don't really understand where their funding comes from. I don't understand how they would be able to pay him, something like, again, let's say that the UFC offered him $5 million base. Let's say it was 4, which is I could promise you that's the absolute minimum that it would have been. 4 million base salary plus pay-per-views. For sure, that is the floor for what he was offered. So let's say it was 4. How is the PFL going to afford paying him $4 million? I don't understand the metrics there. Unless they are investing heavily now to lose money like the UFC did when they started, and they're really going to try to do something big here, right? They just signed Jake Paul. I mean, look, dude. if you have a Jake Paul and Francis Ngannou fight card, dude, especially if they got Nate, dude. If they get Nate, if PFL gets Nate and they could do a Jake Paul, Nate Diaz MMA fight, and then you have Francis and against, I don't know, fill in the blank, some boxer that's going to come in and do MMA, dude, you got yourself a big event right there, a real big one. Now, you can't build a business with one event, but this is the thing, and this is what I want everyone to really understand. If Francis executes on this, which if you're betting against him, you do not understand humanity at all. It's exactly like the way where I say, a perfect example of the point I'm going to make is I hate when people tell me that Bill Gates only does things because he is he's doing it because he's charitable. No, it's the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. He's not doing it to make money. You're like, why are you saying that? Dude, he's got $200 billion. Why does he need to make more money? It's like, dude, he didn't need any more money when he had $5 billion. Okay. These are people where their function, this is what they do. If Bill Gates had $10 trillion and there was $11 trillion in circulation, he would be trying to figure out how to get the last $1 trillion. That is what he does, okay? That is him as a person. That's what he's always going to do, okay? Now, with Francis, he has always gone against the grain and done the most impossible seeming things. He left a sand mine he was in his 20s. He had never boxed. He had never trained anything. He's in his 20s. He's like, I'm going to go be the boxing champion of the world. What are you talking about, dude? What are you talking? Literally like that. It's like Francis saying he's going to leave the sand mine in Cameroon, I believe Cameroon, in his 20s and then go become a boxing champion with no training is not crazier. I actually can't even think of anything that's more crazy than that. That is literally like Jake Paul when he was at Nickelodeon saying he's going to beat Canelo Alvarez. Okay? Like what Jake Paul's already done is incredible. But that'd be like him saying I'm going to beat Canelo Alvarez and then doing it. Okay? It was an impossible dream. Just getting to Europe was damn near impossible. If you guys don't know his story, so the point is like, this is a guy where things that seem impossible, he gets it done. He gets it done. He gets it done. Which is why even if he's fighting Tyson Fury in boxing, I wouldn't necessarily feel comfortable betting against him. Just based on historical. Now, just on a pure X's and O's, I'm watching Tyson Fury box, I'm watching Francis Ngannou strike, I would be like, he can't win. Like I don't see a scenario. I don't see how he could win. But there's also no way that he could have done any of the things that he's done. And he successfully did it. So he is probably going to successfully get one of these boxing matches. He's going to make a boatload of money. And the reason why that's so important, right, is because go back to what I said about fighters retiring broke, hungry, and sad, right? These guys all know. They all know that, dude. You think that they don't stay in touch with fighters they used to train with and they see what they're doing now? Like Strickland said, teaching kickboxing classes, teaching jiu-jitsu, all that stuff. Like, I mean, there's no shame in that at all. But it is a big, big drop from what they were doing as a UFC fighter and to a UFC fighter who's observing it from the other side. It probably looks like a terrible outcome. And so all of them are thinking, how am I going to get enough money so I don't have to do that? How am I going to get enough money so I don't have to do that? And so UFC champions and the best guys who have seen Francis fight out his contract, go over to boxing, make $40 million. That is going to be what they want to do. That is going to be their target. That's what they're going to want to do. And that changes everything for the UFC. That changes everything. You want to see fighter pay? You want to see fighter pay change? That's how it happens. Right there. Okay? The fighters are never going to unionize. That's not going to happen. They are too combative. The UFC has very strategically, kind of split. Like the UFC is incredibly smart with how they've managed all of the fighters, and all that, like to keep it to where the likelihood that these guys are ever going to unionize is extraordinarily low. That said, the best way to fight for fighter pay is to leave the UFC and go make a boatload of money. So their superstars all try to aspire to do the same thing, which means the UFC is going to have to start negotiating with those guys and paying them significantly more, which will then trickle down to all the fighters and fighter pay will go up. Now, I am going to say again, I think the biggest thing that I came up with that might actually have an impact on something in this video was I just did the math on a $1,000 a month healthcare stipend. It's less than $5 million. The UFC should do that. End of story. They're independent contractors. You got them under exclusive contract. Pay each guy or each fighter a $1,000 a month health insurance stipend. Boom. Say it's for anything. You can call it whatever you want. Here, it's a health insurance stipend, $1,000 a month. It's $4.8 million. If you gave them $2,000 a month, it's still it's less than $10 million. That's nothing. We know what their numbers are. They're a public company. That's nothing. That's nothing. That is nothing. That's nothing to them. I mean, you could pay it to me, and I'll never say it on the channel again. You could bribe me. I'm just kidding, you guys. I'm joking. But anyway, I'm going to find out a lot more as we go. I hope Francis, personally, I hope he fights Deontay Wilder, because I don't know how many of you guys know this, but the genesis of this channel right here, okay? The genesis of this channel, which is the thing that makes me happiest in the world, right? I can't even explain to you how grateful I am for you guys and this channel right now. I can't even explain to you how grateful I am. I wake up every morning, I remember that I don't have a job and that this is my job now. And it's like my heart gets cracked like an egg, and gratitude just envelops my entire body. It feels warm. Thank you guys, dude. Thank you so much. And the genesis of this channel right here came because of another guy who I am incredibly grateful to right there. That dude. Okay? There's a reason why that dude is in the background every time, and I don't say it enough on the channel. It's because Chael put me on fan questions. That is why I have this channel. Straight up, no question, that is what it is. And the question that I asked him that he put on first, I was on twice, but the first one that they put on was this. I will reenact it for you. I could go dig it up again. It's embarrassing that I don't have it downloaded so I can put it up every time. But here's what I said. Okay. I said, what would be your dream fight under any circumstances with two guys under any rule set in any combat sport whatsoever? Mine would be Francis Ngannou against Deontay Wilder in a boxing match in MMA gloves. What's yours? That was my fan question. And that's what started it all. That. And then I just started sending, and Chael's answer was GSP against Conor McGregor. And this was in 2019. I just started sending him questions. Like, I was literally recording questions and sending them every single day. And I kept watching them. And I was like, dude, these are fire takes, man. I'm objective enough to know what talent looks like. And so I was just watching. I'm like, dude, I can do this, son. Look at these takes. Look at how good looking this motherfucker is. God damn. And so the beginning of this channel was me dreaming about a Deontay Wilder and Francis Ngannou fight in MMA gloves and boxing. And no one is ever going to dispute that the boxing and MMA gloves idea was mine. Mine. I put that idea into this process over here. I did that. And if anybody wants to know how, I told Francis's manager that that's what they should do. So that is how that started. And I will take credit for just that one idea. And I will be ecstatic when it happens. I don't want a dime. I'm like Artem, dude. I will go to sleep. I will go to sleep in a blanket of warmth knowing that I was able to help you, Francis. I love Francis. Give me this, dude. Give me that fight, dude. Give me that fight. Thank you, guys. I love you. Peace.